Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another class. It's always nice to see some smiling faces out here. Now, we have a wonderful lesson plan for you today. I'm going to hand out a photo to you, and I'd like you to look at this photograph and be reflective. Take your time, as much time as you need, to think of 3 key words that you should write down on the back of this photograph. All right? Are there any questions?
We're looking at a picture and telling you how it makes us feel.
You're going to look at a picture, and I want you to think of 3 key words that come to mind when you look at this. This is not something that you should make a quick judgment on. What I want you to do is be reflective. Think about 3 words that come to mind when you look at this photograph. All right? Does that sound fair enough? Very
Promise
good.
to take it with the seriousness this task requires.
All right, please, Miss Baker, take one, pass it to your colleagues. Thank you. Please make sure Miss Jones gets one in the back. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Delgato.
Any type of words? Can it be names?
Whatever key words are reflected from your feelings from taking a vision and a view of this picture. Take your time.
This isn't like a trick.
This is not a trick. This is just finding out what your feelings are in regards
To this picture.
to the images in this photo. Three keywords.
You said it can't be names.
I didn't say that.
It can, okay.
Okay.
Again, take your time and be reflective. No cheating. Please keep your eyes on your own paper. Would anyone like more time? Everyone is good? All right. We're going to start with Mr. Cope. Mr. Cope, please describe these words and also describe your feelings behind these words and why you came up with them.
So, my first word was hunger. It appears one of the swans is eating, and the other swan is looking to be fed, and the duck is also looking to be fed. It appears, it's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like there's some people along the edge there that are maybe feeding them or at least drawing their attention, and it seems like they're hungry by the way that they're looking towards the people standing there, and the way that the one swan has its head towards the water where it looks like he's eating. My second word was separation. I noticed in general, I believe that I see the two swans and the duck here, and it looks like along the edge of the top there are a few ducks or other birds that are kind of off in the distance on the lake. And just looking at the scale and the space between where they are, and the way that there's separation between each of the ducks or the geese and their bodies, or swans. I don't know if that's a swan or a goose. I don't know how to tell the difference. And then my last one was ripples. And I look at the water and I see ripples throughout. And I notice that each of the animals kind of disturbs that natural patterning of how the water would kind of bump up against each other, and especially the bird in the front there, it's got a nice big circle around it showing the effect that it's had on its surroundings.
Very good. I appreciate your observations, Mr. Cope. Miss Baker.
All right, my first word was overpowering, because swans are very large and, in my opinion, scary birds. And it looks like they could be overpowering the duck for the attention and possibility of food from the people standing on the side. My second word was segregation, because with everything we've been talking about, I kind of read into the fact that the two swans are larger and they are white compared to the smaller black duck, which leads me to my third word, which was minority. So the black duck being in the minority of the two other swans that are bigger and white and then smaller and black.
Thank you for your input as well. Of course, Mr. Parker, it's your turn.
Well, I found this really much less provocative than either of these two people. So I wrote down what it reminded me of. It reminds me of a corny dentist portrait. Each word operates individually and as a statement, because it's just a picture of some birds in a creek. It looks like somebody took this picture while they were on vacation with their iPhone and posted it on Facebook. It is a portrait, and it looks like it's something that would hang in the waiting room in the dentist office. It is technically prettier than a white wall, I'll grant it that.
And your key word in there, anyone?
Corny dentist portrait.
Oh, so you used all three together. I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yes.
Thank you for that input as well. Ms. Coleman.
Yes. So my first word is disconnected. And I chose that word because on the side, you can see a person on their phone. And instead of staring at like the beauty of the lake and the swans and everything, they're taking pictures of it. Either that or they're just on their phone focused on that. My next word is need. And I picked that one because the geese or the swans clearly need food, and so does the duck. And that's kind of why they are even entertaining the people that are on the side, because they probably wouldn't really want to be near them if they didn't think that it meant food. And then the last one was share. And I chose that one because the different species of birds are sharing the same area, because there's ducks and swans, and they're all in the water together.
Very good. Thank you, Aaliyah. Mr. Delgato.
Well, before I tell you my 3 keywords, I'm very impressed with what everybody wrote. You are all very observant, and especially John. Wow, just wow. I say that to prepare you for how simple the 3 things that I wrote are, because they really are simple. And I could have observed all the things around the side, and I could have looked at, the whole picture, the cars, and the fact that it kind of looks like a place in San Francisco. But I decided to just go with the 3 things that came up to my mind immediately. And Aaliyah knows that I love music, and I love classical music. And I thought of 3 different people because of this photo. The first one is actually a writer, Hans Christian Anders, who is the writer of the fairy tale, The Ugly Duckling. And that's the first thing that I thought of. Of course, in this, it seems like it's reverse, in the way that the duck is the one that seems to be separated. But if I looked in the distance, there's a lot more of different birds in the back, so maybe that's not the case. I just thought The Ugly Duckling is kind of a story that comes to my mind. And we often kind of see that in our environment. I mean, it was written for a purpose. So that came to my mind. The second thing that came to my mind was Camille Saint-Saëns, who was a French composer who wrote the Carnival of the Animals. There's a beautiful piece called The Swan. They are very famous, played in weddings and all kinds of events. It's very beautiful, and it mostly talks about how much the swans work underneath the water, and how majestic and how elegant they seem at the top. And you can kind of see also by the ripples in the water, they're creating a lot of friction under, but they seem so unstressed by it at the top. And then the last one is Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, the Russian Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, who is the composer of the Swan Lake ballet. Also kind of goes to more things that this reminds me of.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, Mr. H.
Well, we had a similar thought. My first word was ugly, because I saw the Ugly Duckling story represented here. I'm also not 100% sure that that's a duck. That might be a baby swan. They do look very different for a reason. Their necks grow. They molt all of their feathers and change colors. So the second word I had was hungry, because everybody's lined up for food, big and small. And the other one was deceptive. Swans are not nice birds. They're aggressive. And that is probably what makes them ugly to begin with. But you've got this thing here where this picture looks placid. It looks comfortable. I mean, it's not especially well framed, but it is safe. That smaller animal isn't safe that close to those birds. And this, I mean, yeah, no, that's what I think about all of that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Miss Jones, we save you for last.
The first word I thought of was beauty, which I also think can be synonymous with happiness. And the reason why I say that is because this seems to me a city park in a relatively bustling urban area, maybe with some tourists there on the side. And I'm an outdoorsy girl, but I also love culture. And so I oftentimes find comfort and peace in situations very, very similar to this. The next word is escape. And I also use that word because I often come to areas like this to escape the world. And I also liked the juxtaposition of the wild animals and the water and nature in contrast with the cars and the buildings in the background. And the last word I chose was travel, because I am a huge proponent of traveling. I think it makes you a better person. And with the historical monument in the background, and this obviously not being in the United States, it made me feel the feeling, a deja vu type feeling of previous traveling experiences.
Very good. So, what I'd like to do now is have you take another look at this photo. And I'd like for you to reflect on what happened. Yes, I would like for you to reflect on the moments before this picture was taken, and then reflect on what happened after this picture was taken. Please find some words, 3 key words, to reflect on that, and we will describe this as well, just like we did. More than 3 words if you like, more than 3 words. So again, reflect on what happened before the picture was taken, and then reflect after the picture was
So
taken.
is it 6 words, 3 and 3, or?
The entire story of what happened prior, so as many words as you like to compile this story to the events that happened prior to this picture being taken, and then write another story of your thoughts of what happened right after this picture was taken. Use your imagination. Be creative. Find the writer within. And take as long as you would like. This is not a timed evaluation. Please go ahead and look to me when you are finished. You must be getting writer's cramp. Thank you, Mr. Delgato. Thank you for your patience. I think we have Hans Christian Andersen in the flesh. Now, Miss
You
Baker,
said as many words at the end. so.
this is true, and I love you followed direction. Thank you so much. Now, Miss Baker, what I would like for you to do is read your story, both what happened prior to this picture being taken, as well as what happened after this picture is taken. We're going to do the same and go down the line and figure that out, but we will start with you, Miss Baker.
All right. Well, I didn't write a full novel like Mr. Delgado here. I only wrote a few keywords once again, but I wrote one word for or two words for before, which is attraction and feed. So I think that the birds were attracted to the sight of people because they were aware that, oh, this has been a source of food before. If I go over there, I'm likely to get fed, and that they likely did get fed. And then following the picture that we see here, they're still investigating if there will be a source of more food. So I wrote pester because I believe that, as most birds do, would pester the people on the side for more food. And then I also wrote chase because I've seen small children in parks before get chased by swans that they've thrown chunks of bread at. So I that's what I believe happened.
Very good, very good. Mr. Cope.
Well,
Pardon?
I say hold, I take it so literally, except for my eyes. Ruined my ruse.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, ready, guys?
We're starting from the beginning.
Just right here, yes, please. And action.
Yes, Miss Baker, please tell us about your story that you wrote down. Both what happened before the picture, what happened after the picture.
All right, well, I did not write a full story. Instead, I continued on with the exercise from before with writing keywords for both before and after. For before, I wrote attraction and feed, as the birds were probably attracted to the crowd based on the fact that they had known them as a source of food before, and that if they went over there, they would be likely to be fed again. As there's no food in the water apparent in this picture, I interpret it as they've already been fed. So I then assumed that following the picture, they were likely to both pester and chase people in pursuit of more food, as I don't believe swans to be particularly nice animals.
This is all your thoughts
Yes,
from just the before and after.
yes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what are your thoughts of her story?
I had quite a bit in similarity to what you kind of saw with that. Am I able to go into that on how it relates, or
Stop 1 second. Why do you think she came up with some of these words? Why do you think she came up with this story here?
You know, I think part of it is her understanding of the interaction between the people and the birds, and I think a part of it has to do with observable behavior that we have regarding these animals and how they behave.
And please chime in, everyone. This is not just a solo lecture here. Yes.
It seems to me she's relying on kind of simple personal experiences that don't require much depth.
Interesting.
It's a picture of two swans.
Seriously. I think one thing.
Maybe
that's-
3. We don't know.
I think one thing's kind of interesting though. Like, she responded to the.
Wait. Not just your opinions. Not opinions, just the words of her story. What
Yeah,
they
the
make
words
it.
she used were very different than mine because it seems like you had more of a naturalistic approach. You were thinking more about the animal, and I kind of thought more about the photographer in this before and after scenario. So
Not
that's just-
comparing your story, it's just her words.
I
not
have to
comparing.
provide some context for what I think about her words.
What about her background made her write her particular story?
She appears to have more of an interest in animals than I do. Is what
It's
I
not
would say.
your life, it's her life. What do you think demographically
I don't know
in
anything
her
about
background,
this girl.
but from what you know of her from being in class, you know very little of everyone, but you have observed Ms. Baker in class. So from what you have observed from Ms. Baker, what
She
do you
appears to like animals.
She looks to be a very nature-loving girl. I don't know if you can see, but she has a tattoo of a bird on the back of her neck. So I think that makes her into nature, and I think that she's had experience with birds, which is why she has stories of birds being evil. And so I think that she's drawing on past experience rather than some people might draw on imagination. She drew on experience.
Well, go beyond the words here. Based off of what we've been discussing in class, based off of our debates that we have been having, based off of any kind of verbiage you've heard from Ms. Baker throughout your stay here in class so far, how do you feel about this? Yes, Ms. Jones.
It seems that she was solely concentrating on both of her stories, or both questions, on the birds themselves, and not really giving any sort of attention to the rest of the picture. What else is involved? What's in the background? So on and so forth.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, let's move to Mr. Cope.
All right. As I mentioned, I had some similarities there, and my first word was for before, and it was waiting. Looking at the water, the ripples indicate that they've been still there. It doesn't have any path where they've come in, so they've been there for a little bit. There's no direction to indicate where they came from, so they had to have been waiting there long enough for at least the water trail to settle. My next two words were for after, and you got me going on a story, and that's kind of what I did is I looked at it and I said, what could be happening here? And I look at the swan in the foreground, and I see someone had mentioned the camera, and it almost looks like the bird is looking at the camera but doesn't look happy. And so my second word is attack, because I believe that swan afterwards is going to attack that person who's holding the phone as a protection to protect the other bird there. And my last word is chaos, because when a swan attacks people or any kind of animal attacks a person, there tends to be quite a bit of chaos around that.
Well, again, based on Mr. Cope's demographics and based on his participation in this class, these stories, which were very brief, what can you tell about his story? What are the feelings that you have in regards?
I think because he is
One by one. Let's go ahead and start with Miss Jones in the top.
One example would be he was focusing again solely on the birds and anything that had to do directly with the birds, such as the camera and the ripples. He mentioned the word chaos, which shows perhaps some sort of affinity or a primary response to some sort of negativity or conflict.
Okay. Mr. H?
Pays attention to context clues. The ripples have stopped moving behind the animals, therefore they're not moving anymore. He's paying attention to where the animal's looking, so he's paying attention to the information present, which is consistent with everything he's ever said.
Okay. Mr. Delgato?
Yeah, he does seem like a very analytical person. So certain details that sometimes one wouldn't catch, he's catching them. It's very, very minute little things that you may think don't play into the context, but they really do. As you play different stories in your mind about what could be happening, and then you compare it to the evidence that he provides, sometimes you think, well, maybe the story I'm playing in my mind isn't quite correct because they don't quite fit against the information that he has provided via the observations that he made. So it does fit with his character as well as what he has provided for us in the few lessons that we've been together. So
Very good. Aaliyah?
I think fitting the idea of a peaceful Canadian, I think that as a Canadian and being so peaceful and nice, you use the word happy, but outwardly you were using words like attack, which would, I feel, reflect the rest of the world outside of Canada.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Parker?
I think that he used some words that definitely surprised me, like attack and chaos, because those are the last things I think of when I look at this picture. And I just have to agree with Mr. Delgado and Mr. H when they said that he had a very unique perspective and was thought out. It may not have been what I thought, but he was well thought out still.
Very good. Ms. Jones?
Oh,
One
my
more time.
answers?
Yes. Well, no. One more time on Mr. Cope.
You want me to say what I said again, or?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Let's go ahead and listen to Mr. H on that.
All right, well, my first word...
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I forgot Miss Baker. Hi, you've been so quiet. I keep forgetting you, so please, Mr. Copes.
Yeah, what I was going to say, it kind of reflects a lot of the things that have already been said. As was mentioned, obviously his observations were very detail-oriented, which reflects how he's been in class, but also contextually relevant based on experience, because for him to say that he thought the swan looked angry and likely to attack, you'd have to have some experience and or background knowledge on swans to make that interpretation. So I think he, consistent with how he's been in class, combined that detail orientation and context specificity very well.
Mr. H will let you simmer a little bit. Mr. Parker.
Yes. I said, you want to hear what I...
Yes, I would love to hear your story both before and after.
Okay. Well, I kind of broke it down into 3 phases regarding where we are in time in relation to this picture. Up until the picture was snapped, this was just an observation. It was nothing special. And it continued to live on a little longer than it deserves to. That moment the picture's been snapped and forward kind of moves into this area that we're living in right now. This overshared part of this picture's life. It's just, it reminds me of all the reasons I deleted Facebook. It's just something that didn't need to be shared. It's so mundane. It doesn't provoke anything. It's not, I don't think there's a deeper subtext to this picture. To me, it just looks like somebody observed this, snapped a picture, and showed it to everyone. And probably as soon as I leave today, we're going to move into the 3rd phase here, where this picture's forgotten.
Interesting. Ms. Baker, your thoughts of Mr. Parker's story before and after?
I think it was very negative in connotation from the beginning to the end. Not that that's a bad thing, but I think he chose to focus, he obviously focused on how oversharing and how that is very prevalent on social media and how it would be forgotten. And I don't know, just around the whole all of his words to me read as just very negative.
Yes, Mr. Coe.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You know, it seemed very negative, and it kind of seemed off assignment to me. You know, I didn't really hear a before and after context. It just seemed to be him complaining about the picture itself, which I think has been something that's happened in this class as well. It almost seemed like he had such a disregard for the activity that we were doing that he felt no requirement to participate in the way that everyone else has.
Miss Coleman.
I got the before and after. It was like very clearly set before, current, after. But it was like a spin on it, which I think kind of reflects the fact that he's a libertarian and he's different than all of us. I'd say that we could all go left or right, but he's a libertarian, he's a little bit different. And I'd say that that kind of reflects in the way that he chose to read the assignment and the way that he chose to interpret it. It was pessimistic for sure, but it was unique.
Mr. Delgato.
You know, it's very interesting the way we observe his keywords. Whether I liked it or not, whether I thought it was accurate or not, becomes irrelevant when the most prevalent thought in my mind right now is that it was sincere. We only have a picture, so we are all guessing. It could be the greatest moment in history and we missed it and we just got a glimpse of it right before. Could have been the worst thing in the planet. But we don't know. We're all making assumptions. And maybe some of us are optimistic. Maybe some of us are perceived as pessimistic. But, and this goes to what John said here. He said it was like off task almost. But the task wasn't really to write something beautiful, you know?
No.
Not because I, started to write a novel over here doesn't mean that, you had to be in it. I mean, he wrote the 3 words and they were sincere, and that's his point of view. And it's a picture. I don't really have a problem with it, and I can understand what he is saying. There certainly is a lot of validity to what he said. So, yeah.
Very good. Mr. H.
You asked for the before and after of this photograph, which is exactly what he gave you. He gave you the lead up to the photo being taken, the photo's life in social media, and the photo's life in this classroom. I mean, it's been long enough, I will probably remember talking about these swans. I think we've spent enough time that I'm not gonna forget this picture, but do I think this picture deserves to be remembered? No, probably not.
All right. Ms. Jones.
Extremely cynical, for sure, no doubt. And I'm sure he would agree as well. He keeps talking throughout class about individual responsibility. And he was he has been on multiple occasions extremely cynical about social media and sharing, i.e. I think he used the word oversharing. And I think that this is strongly indicative of his beliefs because he doesn't understand, it seems to me, the importance of relationships and how we as individuals connect with society and the people around us.
Okay. Well, Ms. Coleman, you're up.
All right. Before, I think that it started out with family, probably tourists and families spending time together on the edge there, watching the birds. And then I believe that because of so many people were on the side, I chose the word bustling or busy. And I think it caused this person to drop their phone in the water. At which point there is discourse among the birds who start fighting over the phone to eat the phone.
Ooh.
And then I chose loss because the girl has just lost her phone. I'm choosing that that's a girl, by the way. Loss that the girl drops her phone in the water. And then I chose the word poison because the birds eat the phone. And that reflects the unnatural tech of our world entering into the natural world and poisoning it.
Very interesting. Ms. Baker, your thoughts on this?
I think that's a really deep analytical way to approach it, which I really enjoyed. But I think that's also reflective of the way she looks at a lot of things in class based off of previous discussions. She's kind of able to look at stuff contextually and then say, all right, what outside of this is interfering with what we're directly discussing or talking about, and then what are the influences of that? And yeah, that's what I think.
Very good. Floor is yours, Mr. Cope.
All right. I guess I was a little confused as to which were her 3 words, or if it was that she had more than 3 words, because it seemed I wrote
Add
down
more
a
than
few.
3 words.
It could have
Yeah.
been as many words as you wanted to.
Okay. So in that case, yeah,
those were the directions.
I understand it as, you know, I kind of like that. I see that her, you know, is partially letting her perception go towards what could happen, and also the significance of what that interaction of worlds could mean. And I think that in class she's shown an understanding for different groups of people, and an understanding that you know, technology might not always move us forward.
Mr. Parker.
I have to say I'm really impressed because you've never seen this side of you. You're quite a creative soul. I think that your story was way more moving than the source material that inspired it.
Very good. Mr. Delgato.
I agree with a couple of things there. Yeah, certainly very creative. But that doesn't surprise me. You're a very creative person, very smart. It does worry me a little bit, because within this whole story there is such a dark ending. Not that there's anything wrong with dark endings. It's real. Things like that do happen. But it's almost like there's an inner fear, like that something like that would happen, when it's very unlikely to. Doesn't happen as often as we think it does. But another thing I was going to observe is that I observed Miss Baker and John and Aaliyah. They both, to a degree, made the birds as their main characters of the scene. And why not? They're in the very center of the picture. It only seems logical that you would make them the protagonists of their stories, of the main characters of this, whatever is happening here. Aaliyah had a bit of a combination there, because there was a girl that was sad that lost her phone. But it seemed interesting to me, especially going by some of the critiques of us or observations from my other classmates here that I've seen, where they tend to make the main character of this scene the person who is taking the photography. And I don't know if that has any kind of correlation with their political kind of tendencies, because these 3 people here, I seem to agree on most things than they disagree with. Same with these 3 people over here. So I don't know if there's any correlation there, but it was impossible not to see that. Maybe I'm just creating a pattern there. We are humans. We are pattern machines. We see patterns wherever, even if they're not there. So, but yeah, that's what I can observe.
Fair enough. Mr. H.
I thought her story was fantastic, and I mean that in the literal definition, which is a good thing. It's not a negative. Actually, you and I see this image pretty similarly, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the story of the photographer dropping her phone 3 feet into the water and the swans being able to pick it apart in a case and eat it and getting poisoned, that feels like a modern day Ugly Duckling almost, where this is a morality tale. I thought it was fun. It was awesome.
All right, very good. Miss Jones.
So if this was a dream and Carl Jung was here to interpret, I think he would have some pretty obvious and interesting findings. Negativity in dropping the phone, negativity in fighting for the phone, negativity in dying from poison of the phone. It seems to me that in her mind, perhaps, as Jung may say, there's a lot of conflict and maybe in a way a feeling of hopelessness.
Okay, very good. All right, our novelist, Mr. Delgato.
I'm excited.
I think your expectations are really high right now. And
Yeah.
Just like I said in the beginning, it is very simple. It is very, very simple. I listed 3 composers before, 2 composers and 1 writer before, and that's all I thought about. And then this story, I wrote it down. I thought we were supposed to write it down, but it's going to be no longer than what you guys said. All right, let's get to it. It's a cloudy day. I'm judging that by the kind of lighting that there is, the reflections of the water. I see that's probably a cloudy day. And because of how the romantic, because of the romantic clues that there are in this picture, I thought it could have been taken by a couple. So it's a cloudy day, and a couple decides to take a drive to a location where they can take a peaceful stroll near the water. And as they arrive, there's a crowd of people taking pictures in the beautiful scene, taking advantage of the beautiful outdoors. And they see a group of birds near the dock. And some people get closer to the birds and start to throw breadcrumbs at them. The birds start to get closer and start to eat them. And the couple tries to get closer too to get a good picture of the animals. They are no professionals, so they do a mediocre job at taking the picture, but good enough that they will remind them of a lovely afternoon. And after that, they leave the place in silence and get in the car and decide what to do next. Why did I think a couple of things? And I'm going to highlight a couple of words here, 3 words here as well. The first word I'm going to highlight is stroll. It's a very mundane thing. It wasn't thought out. It wasn't something that was extraordinary. They just thought about having a lovely stroll. And as disruptive as it might be for the animals in this case, these people didn't think about that. It was just a stroll for them, just a moment, which is why they decided to take a picture. The second word is professionals, which they're not. They're not professionals, and they don't know that this might harm the animals. The people around them do not know anything about animals. They think it's fun to feed the birds as well, so they give them food. Thus disrupting the ecosystem in all sorts of ways. They think they're doing well, but they're not. These people think they're taking a good picture, but they're not. But then again, it's just for them. And then the third word is silence. Silence, because there is silence about the things that we think we're doing right, and we sometimes are not. Because sometimes we highlight the most obvious things, but we don't highlight the minimal things that sometimes make the biggest impact. Because we might think that is necessary for a girl to drop her phone in the water for it to be harmful, but maybe everything, as far as maybe even the construction of the very dock they're sitting on has been already disruptive to the animals. There's silence about all kinds of things. And there is silence afterwards as well, because to them it meant no more than just a stroll in the park. Silence, because what's next? It'll be forgotten.
Very good, very good. Oh, guess what, Miss Baker? It is your turn to elaborate on your thoughts.
I I really liked that he had the nature of the narrative, though, because I know I am one of those people who likes to remove myself from a busy city setting and go take walks and enjoy nature. And I think that he, interpreted it in a way that might have been similar to experiences that he enjoys as well. The nature of going with someone that you're in a relationship with on a nice stroll through the park, remembering the memories from that, enjoying the silence. It just seemed like a very personal interpretation, but I think that's a great way to look at it.
Very good. Mr. Go.
For me, he had a lot of positivity in it there, and also kind of a focus on simplicity in a sense too. This picture doesn't have to have any grand explanation, I guess, for it. What stuck out to me is that he mentioned, the enjoyment of it in terms of a couple taking a stroll, and the documentation in terms of, that this wasn't meant to be, this had nothing to do with the photo or the framing or anything of a professional level when it comes to photography, but about having documentation of the moment. And I think that's unbelievably fitting for a history class.
Very good. Mr. Parker!
I have to say, I don't think I've ever been in as much of an agreement with Mr. Delgado as I am right now when he says this picture is clearly not taken by a professional. Probably the most common ground Mr. Delgado and I has ever had.
Oh, we agree a couple.
Oh,
We both love Denver. We both love Denver. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Yes, is that
Oh, if I have to devote any more attention to this, I'm going to go crazy.
all right? Very good. Aaliyah.
It worried me a little because you went from being very positive to being very negative at the end, and actually quoting some of the things that I was saying and elaborating on them in a negative fashion. So that was a little hypocritical, which I think reflects some of the things you've been saying in class.
Wow. Okay, Mr. H.
I think his story had more in common with Aaliyah's than she's giving it credit for. I don't think the story has that depressing an ending when they leave together, even though they're leaving in silence. Silence is a comfort in a long-term relationship, so I think you're okay.
Thanks.
Anytime. He made a narrative. It works. And it actually speaks to trying to find a relatable experience in a photograph that doesn't offer many options that way.
Okay, very good. Miss Jones.
I've learned so much from this exercise, and I can understand why you're doing it. Mr. Delgado's story was very simple and matter of fact, as is most everybody in this class as of yet. And it reminds me of what I believe a quote from Van Gogh, who said, "A true artist will find beauty in everything." And every single person in here has had something negative to say about this picture. And I find that interesting.
Very intriguing. Oh, it's your turn, Mr. H.
Oh, joy.
Yes, I'm ready.
Well, my first word was conversion. And that happened a long time before this photo was taken. So something, and it was what I was talking about before with this photo being deceptive. You can actually see on the sidewalk the remains of a white loaf of bread. That's horribly unhealthy for those animals. That is, when I said that I'm going to have something in common with Aaliyah, yeah, people are poisoning those animals. And not only that, you fundamentally changed their nature. You've made them less self-sufficient. Which is I'm sorry. We've actually done studies that feeding birds at parks changes their migratory patterns. It makes them fundamentally less capable. Now, there are good things you can probably feed them, or if you know a specific animal is being affected, great. But showing up to a park with a loaf of bread, you aren't thinking about the animals.
Are you making a comparison between them and poor people?
Mr. H has
It
the
sounds
floor.
like
You will
it.
have more than enough time for your opinion, Mr. Delgato.
I said nothing like that. And honestly, this next is kind of sticking up for them. I said gladiatorial. Who remembers bread and circus? The idea that you're going to show up and we're going to throw you loaves of bread. They're not providing them any real sustenance. They're not providing them anything of real value. They are just doing them harm. And again, that's continuous. Like conversion. It happened a long time ago and it's not going to change. You're not going to change those animals back. And my last word is thoughtless. Everybody has an effect. What you do makes a difference. So if you show up to a park and decide to disrupt the ecosystem to make the animals less capable, you're not going to see it. But those animals aren't going to live as long. They aren't going to have as productive a breeding cycle. So, I mean, everybody has found something negative in this photograph, and I think there's a reason. I think the reason is all of us, at some level, understand that the people in the picture are doing those animals harm.
Okay. Well, you've let your ideas and your thoughts bubble up, Miss Baker.
I mean, I agree with what he said. I think him pointing out the inherent harm in the many different ways that this could be interpreted. I think that's an approach he's taken in the analysis of a lot of the topics we've been covering. But I think it's good to realize these comprehensive connections while we're talking about such even in a picture as simple as this, that there are underlying issues and that we all are aware of those, and he's kind of illustrating that we have that unifying factor here.
Okay. All right. So, let a Canadian version come out.
All right. So, yeah, again, I mean, it seems like everyone has had a viewpoint that has some negativity to it, I guess. And I tend to agree with you. I know that's kind of a weird thing, but, I do. I think, I mean, feeding white bread to animals is very detrimental to their health and in terms of their long-term sustainability. But, as he mentioned, there might be alternatives that we could find that actually are beneficial, but he didn't go into anything that could be the beneficial side, just what is negative about it. And he made a statement about what you do makes a difference. And it brings me back to our conversation a while ago about, I guess I kind of brought up when you see something, say something. And his resistance to that concept, yet here he's saying what you do makes a difference.
Nice. Mr. Parker.
I say, Drew, you're perceptive as ever, and that's consistent with your testimony in class.
Thank you, sir.
A man of few words. Yes. Leah, elaborate, please.
I would say that, I agree with what you said. I think that our perspectives on our perspectives of our opinions that we have, although similar opinions, I believe, come from a different place. I feel like mine comes from imagination, making up a story, and also caring about the animals, and I feel like yours comes from a much more negative perspective.
Mine comes from a fact-based perspective.
Yeah, and you say that a lot. Yeah, I think that you take things as fact that are merely your opinion. And I think that reflects in what you said.
Oh,
Okay. I know. All right, very good. You've been ready to go. I can see it, Mr. Delgato. Please continue with your thoughts.
Mr. Rob, yes. I agree with your observations, so long as they remain to be about birds. If they're about birds and you're not preparing your stage for some kind of weird comparison between birds and anything else, then I will agree with you. Just because birds and anything else that I will not mention now because you have not directly yet, hopefully never, are very different, operate in very different planes of intellect and experience. So that is what I will say. I agree with everything you said, so long as it remains about birds.
Very valid. Very valid. Yes, Miss Jones, please continue.
First, I would like to say there was a couple of comments here that we all had something negative to say. I would like to point out that that's not true because I didn't say anything negative about this picture. And secondly, I greatly admire and respect your narrative. I think it was eye-opening to me. And something I would like to point out to Mr. Delgado in regards to what he just said is the free yet ultimately unhealthy food that is being given to these birds, to these animals, is hurting them. And he's pointing this out not because he doesn't like the birds, but because he does.
That's not what he was pointing out, though.
I was
pointing
saying
out
if it's
that
about
there's
birds,
a
then sure.
I get it, but
Comparison
all right.
that could have been made between some
Sure,
previous
just-
stuff that he
yeah.
said.
I understand, but
That's
please.
what he was saying.
All right. Thank you for that comment. I
I'm
appreciate
glad
it.
you know what I was saying.
Oh, I do know what you were saying.
Well, thank you.
We
thank
all
you.
know what you were saying.
Well, on that note, you can continue, Miss Jones, by letting us know your before and after.
Okay. The photographer has just stepped off the metro, surrounded by people, yet alone, to the sounds of the city and its people. The wind is cold and biting, and the sky is gray. In search of quiet, he or she captured a moment of remembrance. After the picture, the photographer sat on a nearby bench and watched, simply watching, quietly, contently, from above.
Very, very lovely. Thank you. We have a writer, Miss Baker.
I mean, I think her narrative fits the words that she used earlier, as she pointed out that she did not illustrate any negativity in the picture upon first glance, and her story did not reflect any negativity either. And I think that the way she narrated the story is concurrent with the way she speaks in class. She's very well spoken, and chooses to address it in a very matter-of-fact and logical but appropriate way.
Okay, very nice. There he is, Mr. Cope.
Yeah, I guess it seemed to me to be a story, that didn't have any up or down. It was just kind of right in the middle. There is nothing positive or negative about it. And I mean, I guess, with the simplicity of it, I don't know that it was very specific to this. I guess for her it was, but it seems like based on her description, nothing in here was referenced, except, maybe it was her perception of what she thought each of these things might have been based on observation. But it was not about anything specifically here that is in the that doesn't need contextual understanding. There's nothing about anything that wouldn't be an assumption based on what she believes these things to be, such as cold based on maybe someone wearing a long sleeve or jacket, or overcast, which would be an observation about something, but without any context of the sky, or without any context of where these people were coming from. Maybe they just stepped out of a cold bus. I don't know. So it was interesting that it wasn't about this specifically, but about extrapolations from what it is.
Okay. All right. All right, Mr. Parker, please elaborate your lovely thoughts.
I think that that was pretty enough to be on a postcard. That was really well phrased. One observation I've made, you also thought of this before and after from the perspective of the photographer, and that's one thing you and I had in common. And in the context of this classroom, it is an example of how sometimes we share part of a perspective but not the whole thing.
Okay, very well said. Yes, Aliyah.
I thought it was really beautiful. I think that it definitely reflected her tendency to look outside of herself, because I feel like instead of going off of exactly what we see, which is mostly what we all did, she made a story surrounding it. An observation, neither negative nor positive, but how you were saying that you said nothing negative. It's funny how some people view one thing as negative and some as positive, because for me, this is not a negative thing that I'm saying either. For me, being surrounded by people and alone is a depressing sounding thing. For me, that sounds sad, because I think of how many people they feel totally alone, but there's people around them all the time that don't understand them or just don't get them. But for you, you might enjoy solitude, and so that might be positive.
All right. Mr. Delgato, you look like you're pondering quite a bit, so please elaborate on your thoughts.
Well, I can't help to think about just the fact that we're all looking at the same picture. As we get to the last person describing the scene, we're all looking at the picture, and we come out with such different things. Inevitably, there are things that are similar, because it's the same picture. It's one reality. But we focus on different things. We arrive at different conclusions. We have different feelings about it. Although it's the same thing. None of us are presented with a different picture. None of us are presented with a twisted version of it. None of us are presented with a misinformed, a misleading version of it. We all have exactly the same one, yet somehow we all focus on different parts. Miss Baker focused on very specific elements about the scene. And she focused very, very specifically on the actions of the scene. John was focusing so much on the details, the things that other people miss.
Very good.
My friend over here was focusing on like the outer part of it and focusing on the bigger picture or the quality of it per se. And Aliyah was focusing on the possibilities, what might happen, the prevention of this, the prevention of that.
Yes,
I was
but
focusing on some story, but
talking about Miss Jones.
yeah, exactly, and I'm getting to that.
Okay.
No worries. And she was focusing on the possibilities. He was focusing on the harm that might be happening with what it might imply, and she is drawing a picture very similar to mine. And it's difficult not to analyze what she just said and not compare it to mine. And I'm gonna try my hardest not to do that. And like she said, an artist can find beauty in everything. I agree with Aliyah in that she might find what she just said as something very beautiful. It might be. Some people enjoy solitude. Then you compare it to mine, and you find that it's completely opposite. It's company. There's a lot of people. And somehow they both turn out to be beautiful, but she made very specific observations that were so similar to mine, such as it being a gray day, because of the lighting. We're all looking at the same picture, and that's the thing that was the most striking as I hear her story. We're looking at the same picture, yet somehow it evokes different things.
Okay, very well said. Well said. Bring us home, Mr. H.
Nice story. Well phrased. It's pretty. You established that you didn't have anything negative to say about the photo, and that is absolutely true. And it's nice not bringing negativity to the exercise. But I wonder, it was not everybody, but it was fairly common in your response of other people's work to point out the negative or the failings of what they had done. You accused him of being myopic and missing the forest for the trees. That's the one that's sticking out in my head, and I'm not trying to pick a fight here. I mean, he asked us to take a photo completely out of context, and the only purpose of that exercise would be to learn about each and every one of us. And I think he did.
This is really, really a fascinating study on this picture and your thoughts. And I thank you for allowing each other to hear each other out on your interpretations. Thank you. Let's take a break. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the fresh air outside. It's a lovely day. So thank you for sharing. I thought that there was some valuable information that was discussed amongst yourselves. What I would love to know at this moment is what are the what I would like to know are what are the similarities of this particular discussion that we had today about this picture with the similarities that we had in our discussions about President Trump. So how do these correlate with one another just by viewing this picture and also by the discussions we had today? Yes.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what Mr. Delgado said earlier in terms of we're all looking at the same image. It's all the same thing. President Trump, we're all looking at the same person. It's not 10 different people that we're making assumptions or formulating our ideas about. It's a singular image, just like it's a singular person.
True. Anyone else?
Yeah. Well, kind of, might sound a little bit repetitive, but yes, we're all looking at the same person. The only difference, though, maybe, and I know we're talking about the similarities, but just to clarify something, the only difference might be that here we get to look at the picture with our own eyes, right? We're all looking through nobody else's eyes, so we all get to make our own ideas about, and yes, conclusions about the photo based on what we can see. The only difference is that I think with President Trump and politics in general, we don't necessarily see it through the same lens because we have different forms of media that are already fogging the image for us. Whether you choose to see it through CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Fox, whatever, there are all kinds of shades of lenses through which we're seeing this, and that might ultimately really affect our final conclusions. So that's something that is, I think, very different, and the way that we can compare this discussion to our discussion about Trump.
All right, Talia?
I feel like that's valid. We're definitely getting different ways of seeing him, but I feel like I draw my conclusions about him from the things I see him do, and I hear him speak, and I feel like I do get my perception of him from the source, which is him.
So what is the difference as well of your perception of a media telecast as well as the company you keep? How does that correlate into your opinions of maybe seeing something through your eyes and seeing something through the media, seeing something through your society that you live. Yes.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, because earlier when we were discussing this, I remember that initially I had a very positive image about this, but as I heard other people talk about negative things, like Miss Jones pointed out, we all kind of had something negative to say about it, and that did kind of influence me at the same time, because I heard people having a more realistic, maybe I'm gonna call it, taking the risk of calling it realistic, but more realistic version of it, saying, well, you know, there's people feeding birds, that's not really good for them, and I started to think about maybe the negative aspects about it as well, and that definitely influenced me. And I can see that one of the things that happens a lot in our culture is that we tend to associate with the people that already agree with us. So we talk about politics not necessarily with the people that disagree with us. Like, this is new for us. Now we have to talk to people that don't agree with us on most things. Like, I'm sitting right next to Mr. H. We don't agree on a whole lot, and we have to talk about this. Well, if I'm not made to do that, I most likely will just talk to Grant. I most likely will just talk to
Mr.
people.
Cole.
Yeah, yes.
But
exactly.
the same thing is that you were presented with something that everyone can all agree was the same picture. We could all agree that. And we looked at it, but yet our perceptions of what we saw were completely different. Same thing, we're looking at a president, we're seeing his actions, and we all have a completely different idea. Yes, Ms. Jones.
Something that I noticed was everybody's opinion was very extremely, if not entirely, subjective. And I feel like subjectivity is a flawed way of understanding a bigger picture, which is essentially what politics is. And I feel like maybe if we practice more objectivity, we may get further.
Anybody want to elaborate on that thought?
Well, I guess we were asked for our subjective viewpoint and used objective thoughts. I guess for me, you know, I guess someone could argue that those ducks were moving, you know, very recently, but I think objectively, the majority of people would agree that there are things that this picture shows. But yeah, kind of going back to what Aaliyah was saying is that there's almost, also Mr. Delgato, in terms of there being filters, you know, and we each have, so in this context, we have the same thing that we're looking at right in front of us, but we all have one filter. And then you add the media, and that adds a second filter. And the more filters you have and the more different layers you have to look through, each one of those layers, you know, I agreed with Mr. H on stuff, you know. I completely supported his viewpoint in terms of bread being poisonous to these animals and that it's thoughtless, you know, it's very a selfish point of view to feed them. Which, you know, it was something that, based on that, that's the one filter that we agreed on, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. Each layer will eliminate people that connect at that same level, and the more layers we get in terms of different sources of the picture, you know, in this case, we all had the same picture.
But what I find fascinating is it could have been a slip of the words, but you mentioned ducks and not swans, or swans and ducks. You just said ducks. So you automatically said something that is your opinion of what you saw, and then you used that.
Well, I mean, I saw there's ducks in the background there.
I understand that.
I didn't highlight the two swans up front because I couldn't, you know, again, goes back to before. I didn't want to state that because, as I mentioned before, I wasn't really positive if they were geese or swans.
Correct.
And I don't know how to distinguish.
Correct.
So I
But
didn't want to go into placing a label on something that I wasn't sure how to exactly explain.
Just by that information of you being as specific in your mind, you threw out ducks and somebody would say, these are swans. How could he call them ducks?
Well,
See
they
where
would
that goes
perceive
in the
what I'm
community, though.
referencing, yeah.
Yes. Mr. H had his hand up. Yes.
I will say that in the two phases of that exercise, we were much more similar in the first phase. We were much more similar in our interpretations of the photograph in front of us when it was just about what was happening in the photo, not what was happening before, not what was happening after. Some people were more reliant on things in the photo to determine what they thought the story was. Some people got more creative with what happened outside of it. Liberalism is about new ideas, and conservatism is about not breaking what ain't broke.
But who's to say what is broke and what is not broke? So that is part of the conundrum. But how does this now go back into relating it to Trump?
I think so. We can hit points of agreement in. Oh, wow, we have an awful lot harder time. It feels like we have this first step of common ground here with the swans, the ducks, whatever, and we don't seem to have that common ground no matter what we do with Trump.
Mr. Delgato.
Yeah, I completely understand his point. When we have to look at this picture again, this is just what we get. So we are a lot more likely to agree on this because we can see it with our own eyes. None of us is gonna come up and say something outrageous like that swan is blue. Right? That's very obvious. The swan is not blue. It's white.
True.
But when we see it through different lenses, again, the media, then we can't really trust that anymore because it's secondhand information. So it's harder for us to agree on anything relating to anything that we don't see with our own eyes. But of course, how are we going to see Trump with our own eyes? We can't take everybody to be 100% all the time following whatever he does. So we have to have a news
That's
media.
what the media is for, right?
Exactly.
But, they are guiding
But
you.
the problem is that we have developed a fear of the media on both sides of the aisle.
We have?
I believe that we as Americans have developed a fear for the media from both sides of the aisle. People on the left side fear Fox News and condemn it to be the worst news service that there could possibly have been because they put a twist on everything. And then people from the right fear CNN because they fear they make President Trump to be worse than he is to follow a political agenda. So is there any way, could there ever be a way that we could be looking at the same picture, the way that we look at these swans? And now going to what you spoke about the stories that we made up about before and after. Yes, all those things are influenced by our background, they're influenced by our personality, they're influenced by our interests in life, and about so many things that are happening that sometimes have no relation to even our intellect. And so, of course, we're going to disagree a lot more about the things that we don't see than about the things that we do see.
Okay, refreshing. Yes, Ms. Jones, it looked like you had a statement in the back.
Oh,
that
I
you
just
would
wanted
like
to. I just wanted to make a point. He said that the news outlets were media that has two filters as opposed to this picture. I just wanted to point out that this picture is a form of media.
In what way?
It's a picture.
Yes,
Oh, I
but we all
understand that.
have
It
the
is a-
same filter for once.
Right.
But we weren't here. We
But
didn't
who's
take
to
this
say
picture.
this wasn't the media taking
Because
this picture?
I consider I'm a very visual person, and so I can't help subconsciously. My mind frames pictures for me, and my hands are just the medium to capture it. And I understand that a lot of people don't see that way. And I would never frame this picture the way this person framed this picture,
And why is that?
because I feel like there's more artistic ways, creative and maybe more elegant ways of capturing this image that maybe may provoke certain emotions that I feel in myself.
So you're thinking also maybe the media captures a different image. of our
The
president.
image that I'm seeing is an image that I would never take myself. I'm seeing it through the eyes of someone else.
All right. Well said. Anyone else?
I agree with that.
You do? Very good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think as a liberal, I definitely don't believe I'm afraid of Fox News. I think I strongly dislike Fox News because I don't think that it tells the truth very often.
How often do you watch Fox News?
I give myself the chance to watch Fox News.
Okay.
I definitely do watch Fox News sometimes for the entertainment of how stupid I think it is.
So it is entertainment for you and not news.
I mean, no, it's still news to me.
Sounds
but
like
I
you're
don't
judging
take
before
it.
you start.
I have not judged Fox News before I start watching Fox News. I've watched Fox News and based my judgment of Fox News off of watching Fox News. I'm not the type of person to just take things at face value without forming my own opinion about them.
So in a comparison,
But-
would Sean Hannity be similar to Don Lemon?
No, because I think one tells the truth and one doesn't.
Well, it becomes relevant like that when you have more than one lens. See, like what you mentioned. Yes, this is a form of medium, but of media, but we all have the same one. And then when you talk about, well, you know, I wouldn't take this picture the way they did it because of the color, blah, 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 emotions. That's subjective. That's really subjective. You think it's beautiful. Other people might think that this creates a lot more emotion than, you know, embellishing it with certain things here and there. But that's besides the point. What I was going at is that when we have more than one version of the picture, then we start to have differences. We start to think, well, which one can we trust? If we take this with a better camera, perhaps, with one that captures a lot more depth, then we start to say, well, maybe actually I do see ripples in the water that I didn't see before. And so when you have more than one, of course, it changes the whole picture.
But you have this picture.
Well, we have this. This is what we're working
You
with.
have this story right in front of you that someone took. And you have another story of what's happening in this country. How do you perceive both of these in relationship to one another? How do they have parallels? How do they have differences? Comparing the picture to our president.
Well,
With the discussions we've had this week,
looking at
this
the
month.
You know, I was kind of laughing to myself a little bit earlier when you asked that question, because I looked at it and immediately was drawn to the left side of the page and noticed that it's full of shit. And you know, that's kind of how I feel about what's going on now, you know, and this is something that is not a subjective point of view. There are proven facts about his lies. It's clearly observable
Exactly.
that he tells falsehoods daily.
But is the left full of shit?
The
Or is the right
majority.
full of shit?
Oh, I no. The context of the picture, the orientation of where the shit is, has nothing to do with left or right in terms of politics, because you weren't asking about the left or the right. You were asking about comparison directly to the president there, and you know, I think that just as I believe that the shit all over the side here kind of ruins the beauty of that part of the image, I feel like the lies kind of are shit on our country.
Okay. Mr. H, you had a question real quick, and then I'll get to you, Miss Jones.
We've taken the polls. The majority of Trump's supporters know that he spends a bunch of time saying whatever he feels like. Nobody's expecting him to do everything. It's the idea of pushing an agenda forward, which he's doing.
And people are acting like it's the first time a politician has been dishonest at all.
Again,
It's
that's
the-
the river versus the ocean right there.
It's the first time that a politician has been outwardly dishonest in ways that we can see daily.
I
Legally
just
trying to
categorically
obstruct.
disagree with you. I just categorically disagree with you on that.
Well,
this
he-
is
he-
not a unique circumstance we find ourselves in.
Well, I
It
don't remember
definitely
any
is.
other president admitting that he obstructed justice. I mean, he clearly said, and you know what his excuse was? Oh, I wasn't under oath. I mean, you know, that's hard when you have someone that no, I mean, they were the words out of his own mouth, you know.
Are you talking about Twitter now? Is
No, I'm talking about the interview where he said, yeah, maybe I did fire Comey over the Russia investigation. He said that he did that explicitly.
He felt like
So you're expecting that
Wait,
to be
wait.
true, and you're not. Seriously, he mouths off. It's kind of his thing, and you know,
Oh my God.
it gets an awful lot of people talking, you included.
He's living
What does
free
what
in
does that
all your
even
heads.
mean? What does that even mean?
It means that he has a significant voter turnout. It means he has an energized base. It means he's getting shit done.
What does that have to do with him lying?
Do you think the lies help that, or do you think they hurt?
I think, from the perspective of a businessman who's spent a lot of time being effective in his own right, he's not going to change his methodology when he changes office. We elected him because we expected him to be effective doing the things he's always done.
But maybe he's not fit for the highest
Says
office.
you, as the American
Says the
votership said
requirement of
differently.
a president.
What are the requirements of a president? Go on
not-
ahead. Where
Yeah,
in
I
the
know, I'm-
Constitution do we have requirements of a president's honesty? Because if we were looking for
Violating the law?
honesty in, I'm sorry, Bill
Violating the
Clinton
law.
went and lied under oath.
All right.
Didn't we try
Trump
to,
hasn't lied under oath.
Didn't we try to impeach him for that?
Actually, no,
okay.
we tried to impeach him.
But
for
look
that.
at this. Look at this. In the inauguration, he
Yeah, well-
had to place his hand and swear under oath that he would protect and serve and
Protect and
the
serve.
Constitution.
The
There are
Constitu-
factions on both sides that say that he's not. So it's looking at the same picture and saying, well, this is a beautiful picture. No, it's full of shit. Same thing. He says that, yes, I'm here to protect and serve. We have half a faction saying no.
Well, just in regards to his putting his hands on the Bible and swearing, the oath of office is not making him liable to perjury. That's a complete. That doesn't mean everything that I say from this moment on is going to be rainbows and kitty cats and honesty. It means that he's fighting to protect the American people and protect the Constitution like we elected him to.
Which he
and that's
hasn't.
what
Which he's
that
doing.
is apparently
Which
a
he has
matter of
not been.
opinion because I think it's working out fine.
We're talking.
Says the right, straight
Okay.
man.
Let's talk about his efficacy. We've got the trade war. Something that nobody's really going to like to admit. China's going to run out of ammo before we do. That's a negotiation that is simple.
So if you look at it on an isolated basis and you say the trade war is the only power, this is the only system at play. Again, multiple filters. You know, they do the trade war. Oh, what if they start calling in for the debt? They own so much American bonds, treasury bonds.
We can
they
take
start calling
Greece's
them in.
lead.
So then our currency devalues in the same way that a trade war would.
When China's manipulating currency.
So they have an advantage there even more.
So the other side's playing dirty and we're supposed to play nice? Seriously.
What does it have to? So
what I'm-
so
No,
what's
we
the end goal?
lose. We lose all the time based on the fact that we're going the extra mile for everybody else and then they turn around and smack us in the face.
So what's the end goal then? A race to the
end-
bottom? We all lose.
No, the goal is to make America great again, and that means focusing at home. I'm sorry. The idea.
Liberal ideology. He is right. This trade war is doing more than the left is willing to give it credit for. He is creating a competitive corporate tax to bring home companies, and more jobs have come home than you're willing to admit.
More jobs have left than you're willing to admit.
That's been happening since the two.
Well, no, I can't
2000.
literally.
No, don't make it up. Don't make it
Well,
up.
That's
so
been
Don't make it up.
happening.
Don't make it up.
Yeah,
Oh
literally,
no,
he
we've
lied
been
about-
we've been exporting our jobs for decades. That's bad,
And he's
Why?
trying to
and
bring
he's
some
trying to
back.
prevent that.
So why is that?
He's
bad?
trying to prevent that while
Exporting
his
our
companies
jobs.
are.
So
while
As long
his
as you're bringing
companies
in
have
jobs as
employees
well,
in other
okay.
countries, while he's outsourcing employees himself for his own companies, he's
runs a
trying to prevent
global
that. That is
business.
that's a
He runs a
complete crock
global
of shit.
business.
It's all bullshit.
So if you put tariffs on all of the products that you don't own or produce, and then how it's interesting because it's not any industry that Trump operates in over there. Really selective in a very interesting way. Same thing when you look at the Muslim ban and how it was targeting countries that did not have business relationships with Trump. What happened? Saudi
It's just so
Arabia.
easy for
how
you to
many
not
of
see
the how
yourself
many of the
affected
terrorists
because
came
of
from
the
Saudi
position
Arabia?
you're in.
Why aren't they on the
9/11?
list?
Almost all of them.
I know. So why aren't they on the list?
I can't imagine why.
I
I'm
couldn't
sorry.
either. I don't. Oh wait, Trump has business there.
exactly.
I think that's a little cynical
Oh really? Then why the other countries are not the number one place where the
because they have a
terrorists came
larger
from?
practice of Muslim faith, possibly.
Well, and also
can't
Saudi
speak to
Arabia
each
doesn't
country on the
send
list.
terrorists directly from there.
What?
Saudi Arabia
What?
finances terrorism. We know this. Okay? We know this as a fact.
Don't we
But
do
when
that
you
too?
send-
Easy up
When
to
you
them.
send
Don't we do that
terrorists
too?
somewhere, do you send them from home?
Yeah, they came from Saudi Arabia.
Not
and-
directly to the United States.
Oh,
They
okay.
went other places first. We're looking at the places that terrorists
So-
actually hop off.
So when you eat a meal, do you say, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter what firm it's from; it just matters how it was distributed to you"? No,
when
don't worry
you're
about the
trying to
origin.
when you're trying to prevent violence, you pick up where you can catch people. I'm sorry, that's the vulnerable point in that chain. You're looking at somebody and saying, "Oh, Saudi Arabia finances terrorism. That's terrible."
But
And
that's
then
not-
they send those operatives other places. And we look at those other places as the places we can grab them. What is confusing about
But that's
that?
not taking responsibility for what the United States has done to create that, because part of that is what we have created in the conflict that we have created in their countries to begin with.
I think
If anything, we're dealing with the ramifications and the aftermath of the crap that we have done to them.
Saddam was
so we're
committing
just,
genocide against his own people.
and we did any better than them? Did we do any better?
I'm going to be honest, I don't like the way that was handled. The CIA was actually doing a decent job of paving the road for us to install a democracy there, and then we had a bunch of generals who somebody didn't have control over who mucked the whole thing up. I think how you
were they?
engage in
Were they?
military conflicts
Were they
matters.
liberal? Was it liberals or was it? Oh, I can't remember.
Can we walk back just a minute, because you're saying that we should hold ourselves responsible, and you just started throwing around Saudi Arabia. I'm making an assumption here, and I hope it's fair. Did you vote for Clinton?
Yeah, I did.
And the Clinton Foundation had been funded by Saudi Arabia. They've made considerable donations to her
I
foundation.
have a question.
By people
I have a
who have the
question.
There's
interest
this
that-
sort of
Master-
selective outrage, like always with the left.
no.
Oh, it's only bad when the other side does it, though.
Master deflectors, are we talking about Clinton? Are we? Are we talking about Clinton?
I was talking about Trump. I was sticking
well,
to my
you-
points.
I mean, and even regardless, so it's that assumption that you made that I actually support that policy. As I've mentioned in this class many a times, I am very adamantly against the Kissinger style of foreign policy. So to me, no, regardless.
So wait, bringing our people home isn't the expression of an anti-Kissinger style policy?
Where does that have?
No,
explain
you're
that.
talking about
I don't get where you got that jump. I don't know where you're going.
Kissinger style policy involves going into other countries and renovating, right?
Oh, it's
Renovating.
more. I mean, I don't. know.
I'm
I don't
not
know
saying.
about, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what are you
So
saying?
I don't know
if
about
you're
renovation.
Be careful
I
what you
mean,
say.
I would say it's about the ideology of America first, really.
Well-
and going in to protect America's interests. The concept is about protecting domestic interests. Make
Imperialism.
America first.
Security
Imperialism.
isn't an interest worth fighting for, then.
Well, I think
Yes,
there's
way in the
different
back.
ways
Ms.
So
Jen.
what I was going to say in regards to your question was we were told what this picture was. We weren't told here's a picture of a city park. We weren't told here is a picture of some water. Here is a picture. We were told here is a picture of two swans and a duck. So immediately, everyone focused on the one thing we were told, inadvertently or subconsciously or whatever, to focus on.
Okay.
And then after that,
Okay.
okay, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. We quickly created negative observations. Quickly. Negative. We lacked any truly individual thought. And we didn't notice the entirety of the image.
Mine was so in line with all of you.
We didn't notice the entirety of the image without judgment, without ego.
I don't know. I don't know where you went when we were talking. I don't know where you went.
In this class, we were given this picture without telling you what it was. It was just to write 3 key words.
Oh, I thought you had mentioned two swans.
I don't know what you.
I don't think so. I don't remember that.
Check the
I
tape.
want the instant replay.
Please continue on what we were. It was well pointed out.
So
but-
the reason why I pointed that out, because your question was, how does this image and our discussion about the image relate to our discussion previously about Trump? And the correlation there, if you can't pick that, if you didn't pick that up already,
Inherent bias.
is that we're told what to believe by our individual parties or by news media or from whatever. We focus on what we're told to believe in. We create these negative observations, and then we fight to the death. And
Continue
why?
fighting
And why?
so we can get to a solution in our own minds. So continue.
Well,
feel
no, I
like-
think what I'm trying to say is I don't think that fighting from the ego will ever come to truth or understanding.
I feel like there's a bit of a
statement, too.
difference. I feel like there's a bit of a difference with this administration versus other situations. I know when I voted for Obama, I know that it wasn't because I was a Democrat, or a liberal. It was because I believed in what he stood for over the opposition. And I feel like what you're saying does apply frequently in political matters. But in this situation, something that's different than any other time is that I feel as though I don't dislike him because he's a Republican. I also don't believe he's a Republican, but I don't dislike him because he's a Republican. I dislike him because of the things I've seen him say and the things I've heard come out of his mouth, not the things that people say about him or the way that he's spun in the media.
Well, I would like to add to that, though. The reason why I don't watch the news is because I feel like they don't focus on what's really important in our nation. It's become a reality show and pure entertainment, and we love to hate. It is the human nature, and we love it.
We
So,
censor
journalistic
wait.
standard has
Everything.
fallen,
So
I
you
would
don't,
agree.
but you don't watch the news. How do you get your information about what's happening, if I may ask?
Most of the information that most people think is important on the 24/7 news
Uh-huh.
cycle actually isn't, and it is forgotten. And the things that truly do matter.
No, but
the
where do
things-
you get your information about what is currently happening all the time? from?
Information, news that is truly news.
Yes.
News that truly affects society.
what-
Not little tiny nitpick gossip about
Yes.
Trump, right?
Yes.
I find out about. I don't
How?
live in a bubble.
How?
Through people, through conversation, through communication.
So hearsay?
But hearsay, that's still lenses. That's not reliable.
I think you're getting what we were talking about and kind of curving it to fit your angle.
No,
and it's not really addressing. what
I'm
you
just-
Said you take
You're-
first-hand
you're-
account from other people.
Yeah. How is that different? There's no difference.
Okay, it's clear to me you guys don't understand what I was saying, so I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
When people watch news, it's not actually news, in my opinion. I feel like news as we know it today in the United States is purely entertainment. And people sit and watch and choose their chosen anchor and nod in agreement as they spit back exactly what they want to hear. And they get together at in class or at work and they enjoy the hate of it. They enjoy the drama. They feed off of it. And they fight to the death over these ideologies that most people probably don't even understand in the first place.
So what you're
Okay,
saying
but
is
but
that
you're
a
still
lens-
but how do you get that information? You
But
said
that's
you gave
besides the point because
It
that
is
has nothing to do with what
absolutely-
I'm saying.
I
Why
have
does
a-
it matter where I get my information?
because it's still a lens through
Because
which
I don't watch channels.
It's still a
because I don't
filter.
watch Fox News with women with big hair and ridiculous amounts of makeup and
It-
hairspray all over the place. That
it is
means that
still
I'm
a-
uninformed.
No, it's still a filter.
No.
The
I'm
fact
not-
that you
but
don't
I
watch
never
Fox News
said-
is actually a good
I never
thing.
said
But-
there wasn't a filter.
Has nothing to do with
I think you're
Fox
taking quite offense to the fact that it seems to me you probably like to watch a lot of drama. Or
No,
I'm sorry,
absolutely
news.
no, absolutely not.
You don't-
I
you don't?
I don't. I read.
So because I don't. Who said
Okay.
I didn't read?
Okay.
Well, that's what I was asking you. You said
information
I
is
find
if you
out.
consider what is on the news, like presented on a television network, as entertainment and not as actual reporting of facts,
Right.
where do you personally go that
Okay.
you can say, I hear that and I find that reliable?
So I have different social media platforms with articles of I follow. For example, World Economic Forum is a really good Facebook media platform that I follow, and I get a lot of my news through them. I click on different articles, maybe from The Atlantic. I enjoy The Atlantic. The Washington Post, I feel like, is a very journalistic medium that I like to follow.
What do you think is the difference, though, between watching news, whether it be Fox, CNN, MSNBC, your local news? What do you think is different than from them framing that for you and choosing what they report to you to what the Washington Post chooses what they report?
Well, I don't go to the Washington Post and only read what
Okay,
they write.
all of them.
Well-
And no matter what
Well,
source
I think
that
I
you're
think the
going
answer
to.
is obvious.
No, I
What is-
don't.
I think that we're all giving
That's why I'm
her.
asking.
So if you
A hard
watch
time.
any anchor, any show on any news channel,
Yeah.
right?
Like,
You're going to compare everything that you see from the fun music that they play and
No.
the beautiful women in their tight little dresses.
But what if
You're
it's
just
not
being
like that,
self-righteous.
though?
So what
I think
about
you're just being
C-SPAN?
self-righteous.
I think you're being offensive.
What about
offended because-
C-SPAN?
No, I think you're just being
Yeah,
self-righteous.
C-SPAN.
Well, honestly,
So
I also don't.
There's no talking heads on that. And I get your point about talking heads, and I completely
Yeah.
agree. And I think
And I
that's
agree
one of
with
the
that
biggest
as well.
problems with the concept of media, because it's basically these people that are able to say whatever they want because it's their opinion. And I think for me, like I don't look for them to see what they say. I watch the president give a speech.
Exactly.
I listen to the words from him directly. I'm not.
Exactly.
It seems to me, I'm
Decontextualize
frustrated
that
right now.
even.
I'm frustrated right now because I wanted to make a point, and then I backed up my point, and then everyone focused on the relatively inconsequential statements that I made, ignoring the point that I was making.
I
what
think
is
you were
your-
making
I-
a
I-
fine point.
no, I-
I'm sorry,
The
it's been
point I
everyone
was-
against her right now, and I have to say I
I'm not
support a few of
against
her
I-
opinions.
I'm against the way that.
Thank you,
it's
Mr.
presented.
Delgato.
The point I'm making is
There's one. Oh, jeez, I haven't been able to say a single word in
You may
response.
speak now.
I'm glad I've received your permission.
You're welcome.
I don't think it's that controversial for her to say that the journalistic standard has fallen. Anderson Cooper is not Walter Cronkite. It's not an outrageous sky is falling statement. I'm sorry, I don't watch fake news like CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. There's only one thing that I actually outsource: my news. I think BBC provides a more objective
Yes.
coverage.
Yes.
I like
I think that
BBC,
there's
yeah.
I can't believe we all
Al Jazeera
Agree.
is another one.
NPR.
it's not a
I agree with the
controversial
Atlantic.
statement to seek alternative
I
media.
agree with
No,
that.
I don't know, absolutely,
Wall
but it
Street
was
Journal?
her statement that
Anybody?
created this. I guess I think the problem was she was talking about talking heads. The people on. I guess you're talking about like the 24-hour news cycle, and I hope that we can agree that there is a difference between that and a journalistic integrity that's based on journalism and not.
The point I was trying to make, and again, I think we're starting to focus on the inconsequential stuff again. The point I was making is that from what I observe, and the reason why I don't like to watch news, is because people pick a team, they wear their team colors with pride, and they will fight for their team to the death and go home with their chest fully pumped up and their chin held high because they fought the good fight. But the fact is, they're so narrowly focused on this drama that they're not understanding the world around them, and this picture and how all of you chose to look at it is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
I agree with what you're saying in regards to a team mentality about politics. Completely. Just as you felt as though we got off of the point that you were making, I feel as though the point that you were making was getting off of the point that I was making. Because my view of this man, Donald Trump, my view of him comes from him. I turn on his entire speech and watch it. I don't watch the talking heads reporting what they think that he said and talking about the little things. I'm not focusing on that. I'm turning on the entire speech that he made and coming to a conclusion that I don't like him and he's a shitty person.
So what exactly, for me, when I hear Trump, and I hear people who don't like Trump, the color of his skin, the shape his mouth makes,
I don't comment on
the
that.
way he does his hair,
Yeah.
the words he chooses to use. He's not a very good public speaker.
Not eloquent at all, no.
You're loving to hate these characteristics.
That is
about-
not how
Hold
I
on, hold on. Let me finish my
Not
sentence.
once has
Can I
any one
please
of those
finish my sentence?
characteristics
Hold on,
ever
I
been
want to
brought
finish
up
this
here.
before anybody else. You're loving to hate him.
He's loving
And
to hate
hold
me.
on, oh my goodness.
I'm
you're,
sorry.
You're loving to dislike this person for reasons that aren't related to you or his
This
politics.
isn't true.
So
This
tell me
completely
why,
isn't true.
what is the reason
May
that I
I-
don't like him?
I'm not
You
saying
know my
you.
position. You just told me.
I'm
you
not
know my
saying you.
position
I'm
there.
saying when I hear Trump haters out there, it seems like they hate him as a person,
May I speak
not
on this?
necessarily what he's done in office.
Okay.
Okay.
I personally do not hate him because of his appearance at all.
There we go.
I do not. I don't judge people based off their appearance at all, and I find that that is the problem that I have with him. That that's what he does, and I am not a Trump hater because I don't like the color of his skin or the way his hair is. But I could literally say that that is why he doesn't like me. I can tell you that Donald Trump doesn't like me because of my appearance, because of my nationality, because of my race, because of my background.
But what has
and
he done
that's
to make you
something
think
that
that?
Muslim ban?
Muslim ban.
Do you not think that
Uh,
there is ground?
sympathizing with neo-Nazis.
Oh, there's good guys on both
and
sides.
Exactly. There's good guys
Do you
on
think
both
that maybe
sides.
there's logical reasons? Let's put our emotions to
Okay.
the side. It's not fair that there's people who
Runaway
are
inflation.
refugees who have nowhere to go. However, the situation in our country is different because people from that area have been shown to cause certain events that have changed our country
Okay,
as we
take
know.
really ignorant.
take the Muslim
And
ban
so-
out of it.
People from
I'm
those
not saying it
countries
was
have
right.
shown-
I'm just saying there's other reasons outside of
That's the
pure
minority.
racism for people to choose the things that they do.
Okay, so
There are
him
more terrorist
blocking
events perpetrated by Americans than people from the Middle East.
and him blocking.
But that's a kind of a form of diversion from what I'm saying.
No,
I
but
didn't
it
say
but
there
it
wasn't.
stands true, and it's very relevant to what you were saying. And the other thing I was gonna say, you were talking about this polarizing, these teams that we choose, especially when we're watching these talking heads. How is that different to when we only talk to the people that agree with us?
If you
And
want to
when we-
watch your drama TV show, I really don't care.
I don't watch that. You're not understanding. I'm saying,
Okay, go ahead.
How is that different from you talking to only people you agree with?
I don't talk to other people that
Well,
I
that's
agree
what you
with. I'm
made
an
it sound
introvert,
like.
and I'm proud of it. And there's reasons why I'm an introvert.
Do you
And-
read?
and
Do
it's
you read?
interesting
Do you
because-
read any source of news that you don't agree with to get their take on it?
I'm surrounded constantly by people who are always talking about what's going on, and I don't feel like I need to tune into Fox to understand that.
So you seem to understand my political point of view and
I have no
assigned a
idea what your
team.
political point of view is.
Well,
You
you
said-
came up with the concept of rallying around a team.
I
and
came up
find
with a
that-
theory.
So okay,
Trump
theory,
haters.
concept, either way. So it's very interesting to me because I don't believe that. You know, because especially for me, I'm fiercely independent. I don't really support either of the two parties that are part of the two-party system currently. I'm probably somewhere between a party that doesn't exist, it's more socialist, and maybe the Green Party, because I think environmental responsibility is absolutely paramount to our long-term survival. And so for me, it's hard because it goes back to what we've talked about at the very beginning of class, where it's hard where you have two parties that you don't believe in either of their platforms and that you don't feel like you have a voice, but you have to kind of go with whatever is going to get you closest.
Well,
I
get-
can't
what you're
rally.
saying is very
I can't
beautiful.
rally around. I don't rally around.
I'm not
And, it's-
anti-news. I'm not anti-information, and that's not at all what I was trying to say. And I think Mr. Delgado has a misunderstanding of what I was trying to say.
I have a perfect.
And is focusing too much on it. The point I was making is news tells you what to focus on.
No, because I'm
Yes, it
talking about.
does.
So, all right.
Why are we
my
talking
news-
about
Wait. Hold on. I want to finish my point. So, when I watch the news, I'm not watching Talking Heads. I'm watching C-SPAN. I'm watching the president speak directly online.
Actual speech?
You know
I'm
who?
not-
It's
I'm
not,
not
a
trying to
magical
find-
fairy who just sprinkles news dust all over the place. There's people behind that who are guiding the.
What are you talking about?
There's people who work for C-SPAN who write the articles
no,
that their editor approves.
I'm not.
that,
Oh my
that
God!
don't
I'm not
even
talking
watch
about the
speeches.
fucking. Oh Lord!
Just
you're
What are you
not
talking
listening
about?
to me.
Just speeches. Say take just.
Oh, you read
speeches.
just
Okay.
speeches.
No.
Okay,
I'm
hold
saying
on.
that- I'm
Let's
saying that I take my
base our
information-
judgment of our presidents on their speeches. Barack
Yeah, let's
Obama.
do.
Barack Obama was a wonderful speaker, and
I'm
talked
talking about the
all the
content.
time about he wanted
Content.
to provide security, safety, and kindness for people in the Middle East. And then we're going to talk about the fact that that's dishonest when he has a drone program that's killing thousands of people. When you have one of your
my
pilots
God.
come forward and say,
my
I
God.
can't kill any more people when I don't know what they're doing,
Oh my God.
we're talking about him as though he's going to start a war. What war has he started?
Deflection.
Obama ran a war for decades, killing lots
You're
of
a
people, and we never
deflector.
declared
You
it.
are a
No, 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 no,
You're
no.
a deflector.
You're talking
You are
about
constantly deflecting. That's all you're
no,
doing.
No.
What
I don't
makes
think so.
that dishonesty worse than that?
I admire his
He
thought
stands
process.
in front of people and says a bunch of shit. You listen to Trump supporters and they get polled all the time and they say they
I'm
don't
sorry,
listen to
but as
everything
a-
he says. They're
okay.
just looking at what he
As
does.
a straight
And
white
as a
man,
weird
Look at what
New
he's
York
done,
kind
too.
of guy,
straight
he
white
talks
man.
a lot of shit.
as a straight white man, you're looking at this from, okay, Obama talks a lot of shit and what's different between this and that. I'm talking about a racist. I'm not talking about Obama. I'm talking about a fucking racist.
How do you know he's racist,
Yeah.
though?
Are you kidding?
God.
I'm
No,
not kidding.
seriously.
I'm
At
not
what
kidding.
point has he gone out?
Objective news and
I'm outta here.
objective reports and recordings of what someone is solely saying, which
Fudge.
everyone has for Trump. There's no way that you can be as intelligent of a person as you are and say that he is not objectively racist.
Racist.
I really adore the emotion here. I think it's wonderful, but I really would like to
I will
know.
entirely pull back the
I
emotion.
will
What is
ask
the
you
point?
that
I will
question.
pull back I will pull back
So
all
the
of my
first
emotion.
example
Yeah.
you gave me, the first time I asked, was you said, "Well, he's racist because he doesn't want Middle Easterners coming into
Okay,
our
here
country."
we go. I've got
But
one.
do you think that there's more than one logical reason why he wouldn't do that besides
No.
racism?
Listen,
No.
okay,
No.
I would like
There's
to
the
give
answer.
her. I would like to give her an
that is what you
completely
think.
That's the
unemotional-
truth. That is the
I would like to give you
statistical
a
truth.
completely unemotional answer.
Irrefutable, my buddy.
Okay, I've got more than that opinion. I mean, I've got more than that example.
Okay.
Okay, not only did he do the Muslim ban, saying that there are other reasons, right? But I believe that the driving force is because he's racist. Take that one. Let's ignore that one.
Okay.
Right? There's also the blocking of black family candidates into the housing systems that he had, and him being quoted about like I only let Jews handle my money and things like that. That's
The wall.
I think
That's
you're
very
taking
racist.
some of
I've
his
got some
comments
more.
With a little bit too
You
much
know what? I
seriousness.
think that's
Well,
like.
he-
Oh,
Yeah,
it's just the
I-
president. Let's not take him
No, when he was
seriously.
making
It's-
that comment, I think he's still entitled to.
It was
make
a
Oh, but
joke.
if, but if Obama
But
had
if you
said
think
it,
that's
oh
a funny
my
joke,
gosh.
if you think that that's a funny joke, then you're part of the problem. And I've
It
got
seems
more
to me the
examples.
right is more logical and the
I've
left is
got-
more emotional.
And I've got more.
Oh,
I mean,
that's a
I
fact
think
and a
just
half.
from this room,
Wow.
No, that's a fact and a half.
this room.
Oh, really?
I mean, you guys.
Oh
don't
yeah,
think
no, I
you're
saw
little-
Kavanaugh. He seemed real.
All right, I have another
Very light.
example. All right, my other example. Okay, in Charleston, the white supremacist rally that happened, a woman died. Right? Okay, so while these neo-Nazis, these white supremacists, these alt-right Nazi sympathizers are going around and protesting, and a woman dies because one of them kills her with a car. He talked about how there were good people on both sides. Both sides meaning the people protesting the white supremacists and the white supremacists.
There's no such a thing
If
as a
you-
good white supremacist.
Is it possible that Trump is simply empathizing with his citizens?
No.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't believe, I'm sorry. I don't believe so. I believe that he's racist. And I think that him taking so long to denounce white supremacy, not only having a grandfather who was part of the KKK and being endorsed by a grand
Sins of
wizard.
the father.
Excuse
Sins
me.
of the father.
Excuse me. Also being endorsed by a grand wizard of the KKK and never denouncing that proves his racism. And if
Or
you
it
choose,
proves
He
that
denounced
David
the
Duke is
KKK.
sexist and wanted Hillary not to win.
he was endorsed by him and he never denounced his
no,
beliefs.
Yeah, you
Because you want to associate with that?
He wanted to win the presidency, but that doesn't.
Oh,
He
yeah,
wanted to win
No,
the
no,
presidency.
that's just pure politics.
Can we
Don't
let her
comment
talk?
on what
Because
you
she
don't
rarely
like.
Talks. She rarely talks. Let her talk.
I'm not even gonna expand upon this. I'm gonna ask someone who remembers this better than I do to expand. When the hurricane hit, do you remember? You know the comments I'm about to. Yes. Can someone quote that better than I can?
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
Oh God, what did he say?
You're doing a great job.
Shut the hell up.
I mean, okay, so all right, you know, you got me on this one. So I don't know the exact quote, but I can tell you.
That is after he was elected. That is specifically regarding race. That's, you know, not off on a neo-Nazi tangent there. That was a very specific, like, referring to them in a derogatory sense. And
Well,
I do not
let's bring
want
up a
Look it up
shithole
online.
country.
Look it up. Look it up. Look it up.
Shithole country, maybe.
Yeah, that was-
Africa.
it was-
That's not that, but I'm just
And that
saying.
wasn't even
You're-
proven that he said that.
Okay.
And also your statistics.
I just said how you believe.
I'm sorry. Can I get one fucking word out of my mouth?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you are also just straight up wrong. He took 2 days to.
I'm wrong.
He said that he did not want David Duke's endorsement. You
It
may
took
not
him
have
2
taken-
days. 2 days.
Because most
right?
people are
Because
operating in a
somebody-
world where we don't need 1 + 1 is 2 spelled out to us. I think he
Because
was
people
operating under
finally
this
told him.
assumption. I think he was operating under this assumption that we're all smart enough to know that white supremacy is bad.
can't
I didn't
operate
know.
on
Wait,
that.
he
He
has time to Twitter
spoon-fed to
every
us
5 minutes. He has
every day.
He has time to tweet every 5 minutes until like 3 in the fucking morning, and
But
then
that
you
has
can't
nothing
deny.
to do with his politics. You're attacking
How?
his character, and that's
No,
what
we're
You just
talking about
run
that
to
he has
defend him.
that he has every all this time to respond to anything else he wants to, but it takes him 2 days to denounce racism. It's ridiculous.
I
Or
don't
doesn't
think that
denounce it
everyone
at all.
needs him to
He
say
doesn't
that.
denounce
And then you look at, I mean, you know, this goes back to, I believe it was the 70s where there was a lawsuit, and it was against him and his father, who they were using discriminatory housing practices, and they got charged for it. So
Right.
that's the beginning of it. And you know, I mean, you can look at what he said or what he hasn't said, but you know, in terms of the execution, I mean, you know, that hurricane was a perfect example of him not giving a crap because they weren't white. And
we're assuming it's because they weren't white.
No, it's
Yeah.
Oh.
No,
not.
at
Well,
what
he
point
made
did he
these
say,
statements
well,
are-
they're brown, so I don't give a shit?
Yeah, you're.
we
all
didn't say
reaching a
they're.
little.
He didn't
I
say.
wish-
I didn't give a shit because they're brown.
I
He
wish
didn't
that y'all
say
would
it.
open up your minds.
Okay,
just a
well,
little
no,
bit to the fact-
let's open up our minds to
And
something
interrupt
else. So
me.
we're talking about the so-called Muslim ban. Great.
God,
At
so-called
one point,
Muslim ban.
at one point in Earth's history, Islam was the center of scientific achievement on the planet.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
There was a time period where we discovered light travels on a straight line, and it was an Islamic man who found it. And there are plenty of other things that came out of that section of the world. Nobody's denying those achievements.
Are we saying
but
that
right
anybody is?
right now, that section of the world is unstable enough that bad things happen there, and occasionally bad things happen here.
As a result.
Trying to get a handle on that? Okay, you don't like how we did it. What's better?
But he's not putting in getting a handle on
How many?
the local terrorism that we
How
have.
many?
There's a
yeah.
lot of things
How many?
going
How
on
much
with that
terrorism do we
country
have
that
from
we don't
people
necessarily
from the
know
Middle
about
East
it.
a year here?
Last
Or
time-
how about people fleeing persecution like Syria?
Exactly.
You know, but how many people?
Yes,
How
yes,
many?
people
How many?
fleeing persecution in Syria, 99.9999999%
Lord.
of those people deserve everything you can give them.
I'm sorry. But why
And
are
then
these
there are
people
going to be
saying-
those evil people who sneak bad people in there and damage them, damage us, and damage
It's
everybody
happening.
else.
Why have happening the all over store if Europe.
people shoplift?
Why do you think?
Thank you.
Why do you think UK had Brexit? It wasn't because all of a sudden British people were evil Republicans. It's because
they're racist.
were
It's because of a
stories.
misinformation campaign
No,
from
Okay,
Russia.
because of
okay.
you.
Oh, that's
Oh,
such
yeah.
an easy
No.
shield
Okay,
to
so
have
we're
to
talking
protect all your
about
ideology.
problems in the United States. You guys keep referencing specific countries in Europe as though they're the perfect example. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, on all of the things they do. Well, we talk
I've
about
never-
their lack of police shootings. Guess what one of the underlying factors is?
Mandatory
The lack of guns?
Military experience.
The lack of multiculturalism.
Oh, or the lack of
Good
guns.
one.
I don't know. I guess we'll
That's
find
a
out.
good one.
Or
No,
like
I'm sorry.
That's
pretty,
true.
pretty strong middle class, and the fact that there isn't as much.
Or the free
income.
education.
Because there's no,
Less
no.
Which
Stress
is
about
much easier to
bankruptcy.
do
Oh,
when
really?
you're
'Cause-
not taking
'cause-
people from all over the planet.
Yes. Bravo.
Okay, so are you a nationalist now?
Immigration
Are you a white
has
nationalist
proven
now?
to
'Cause it sounds
grow
a lot like
our
you're a white
economic
nationalist.
system.
Do you want to go be with Richard Spencer with your
Okay,
with
wait,
your
wait, 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 wait,
alt-right
wait, 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 wait,
ideologies?
wait.
Is that what you
About
wanna
10
do?
minutes ago, you
I could
said
get out
you
of America
had
if you
other
want.
reasons for voting for Obama other than his party. You want to list all of them?
What is
Yeah, of
that
course.
getting to?
He was a respectable man
Deflector.
I'm
to begin with.
You can't keep calling him a deflector. This
Yes,
is.
I can.
You're right.
If
You got the
it's
First Amendment.
He's
You
the
can
one
say
that brought up
whatever you want.
Obama.
Either racist or
He's
or
the one that brought up
deflector.
Obama. Like,
No matter what, it's one of those things.
No, he can be both.
I'm sorry, but you can't keep hiding behind this shield. You can say whatever you want. You're right.
Shield of what?
He's a deflector. I'm sorry.
Because he brings up other things other than the point.
That
all
Leah,
the
can I?
time.
You have a terrific habit of interrupting me. I'm not sure if
And you don't?
I've been quiet and waiting patiently.
I'm pretty sure
That is
Check
pretty
the
true.
tape.
That actually is
Check
pretty
the
true.
I just
Yo,
think what
guys,
you're saying
let's
about
shit
the
at TM
deflection
for
is that
10.
he's
No,
using
can
it
I
because he
please?
cannot adequately defend his argument.
Exactly.
No,
Which
and this is
I'm
the
pointing
point, though.
out that you're not adequately defending yours.
Yes.
My point
How
is
am I
simply.
not?
It is.
No. When you present an argument, people are allowed to poke holes.
Should I
in
just
it.
leave?
Okay, but
That's
y'all
not
just
deflection.
asked
No
me for
one cares
example.
what I have
Yeah,
to
but you
say.
get off topic.
Should I just leave because no one gives a shit about what I
Yeah,
have to say?
apparently not.
My point is that you're complaining that he's deflecting. He's talking about the president in context to other presidents. He's making a
Oh,
comparison.
yeah, let's compare him to all
You
the
have-
other presidents. Let's do
I'm
that.
sorry,
That's
The reason we're
relevant
talking
to
about it
this
is because he's not like other
conversation.
presidents.
I'm sorry.
Exactly why we voted for him.
I'm sorry, but that's
The minority
exactly
of people in the United States voted for him. It's
And
a
the majority
scam.
of Americans didn't vote at all.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it did. He was not the winner.
Then maybe Hillary
Objectively.
should have campaigned
I'm sorry,
in Wisconsin
but
and
you're not
Michigan
talking
and
That's what we're
Other
talking
presidents.
about. We're talking about.
You're not
Oh,
talking
that
about
he
other
lost.
presidents. You weren't talking about other presidents. You weren't asking me about other presidents because we're comparing
No,
presidents. You
I
were asking
actually
me
asked-
specifically about Obama and why.
It's
Why
almost
were
like
you
he's
doing
another
that?
modern president to
Because
compare
you brought
him to.
up that you had another reason to vote for him, which
But
I'm
why
not
is-
going to blame you for.
I'm trying to figure out why you're asking me that because I think I know what it has to do with.
Yeah, you brought it up on your own and you made a point that
Are you losing your argument? Because you're not
no,
answering me.
You're
no,
shaking.
I'm not.
I'll help
losing-
you. What's the
Constantly
question?
interrupt.
I'm
Okay,
not
the question
losing
is,
my
why didn't
argument.
you
I
ask
am
me about
trying.
Obama.
I
You're
am.
gonna help him just to help him.
Huh? What?
You're gonna help him just to help him. Oh, look at
You
that.
made a statement that you
Look at
had
this,
more
look
reasons
at
to
who's
vote
doing
for
groups
Obama,
over
and
here.
you didn't finish your statement because somebody cut you off. And it was
No, I
something
didn't.
where I was actually going to comment at the time, and I waited for when people weren't talking or tried to actually come back to it. That's not disrespectful. That means I was listening.
you guys
What
are
the
so-
heck is the problem?
Okay, so-
respectful.
Oh,
Let me shit at
I just
you
want to
for
say when
you,
people
for
think
you.
primarily with their
Just
emotions,
wow.
to me, they lose credibility.
Yeah.
I think that you're so calm, cool, and collected over there
I
while
am
we're talking
calm,
about
cool, and
while we're talking about
I can't even
racism
take you
because it doesn't
seriously
apply to
anymore.
you.
Okay. Or
I
maybe,
think that maybe there's
I'm
a
not
reason
directly
why I'm
involved,
getting
so I'm
emotional.
able to see outside of the box.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
I
yes,
mean,
yes.
But do you
Or maybe you
think that you can really see
compartmentalize your
outside?
Or
of it?
maybe, or maybe we can reflect that we began this discussion
About
about the similarities between this picture and what we discussed
Dr.
in the last
Stewart.
weeks and months. This is what we decided. We were going to discuss this picture and what we have discussed about Trump. How have we digressed?
I don't believe that
No,
we
we're
have.
still
How
on
have we
topic.
digressed to our
We're still
differences?
on topic,
I don't
where
believe that
we
we
are
have.
talking about the different filters through which we see this.
Seems to
The
me like
conversation
you're not-
hasn't
It seems to me
changed.
like you're not following,
Oh, I'm following.
or you have a different agenda here.
What are the similarities between this picture and Trump?
I thought my
We've
answer
gone
was
to
so nice.
differences.
I
Thank
think
you.
there's all sorts of
Isn't that what we got into?
Yeah. And it
I
seems
think
to
we're still
fit pretty
focusing on
clear.
it.
Yeah,
But we've gone off to different tangents.
all relevant.
I think
Maybe.
All
Except
based
for-
in what she
discussing what
just
we've
said.
been talking
Those,
about,
like,
we've been talking
politics,
about our
except for the
views on
Obama
Trump,
part.
and that's exactly what we've digressed into. It's still the same subject.
I'm sorry, but like, of course, we're gonna go out on random tirades and talk about things that seem nonsense sequitur. It's almost like politics is an interwoven fabric of a whole bunch of ideas and important issues that make up one sort of whole. It's almost like we can focus on any one of those things to back up our argument.
Wow, we should have been listening to you this whole time. You
Do you have
yeah.
anything
A
like
novel idea.
like beneficial to say? Like you're just like those little puppets in the Sesame Street, like the old
She's
like
sucking
grumpy
you,
men.
babe.
Like, do you have anything like actually beneficial to add?
I have said a bunch of things, but I have
Beneficial
almost
stuff.
given up on
Well,
my
if
hand up.
things were so similar, where was this passion when you were discussing the birds?
It's almost like the
Well,
birds
what
are
do you
completely
think?
nonsense.
birds.
No, no.
I'm sorry.
But we all had opinions.
Like,
wait.
These
we-
birds don't affect my life.
I understand, but you don't know this.
Or
completely.
do they?
Well, you're a fucking swan that's gonna attack my family, are you?
Here's the deal. When we were discussing the birds, we had our own opinions of the birds. We didn't agree on everything. But now it has become this enormous amount of energy and discussion
'Cause now
and
it's personal.
differences and digression into things that don't find the similarities.
Well, it's not necessarily enlightening. It's quite obvious.
Well, I'm curious your thoughts.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Mr.
There's
Parker.
a stark difference between what is emotionally responsive in regards to politics and the most boring picture ever. I'm sorry, I cannot entertain for more. This is exactly why I didn't sign up for a liberal arts degree, because I didn't want to sit here and talk about how a picture makes me feel and listen to everyone else reaching with all these infinite right answers. I'm sorry, but if there's an infinite amount of right answers, then none of these answers are right. It's just a waste of time. It's a futile conversation. We're talking now about politics, which actually has some relevance in our life.
Well, if you had taken some more liberal art classes, you would know that there is no
I
such
would have
thing as
shot
truth.
myself.
There is no such thing as truth. Truth is relative. Correct?
There are certain things.
No,
there are
I would
certain-
agree because all of it is based on our continual observation and the ability to
However,
correlate that.
our opinions that you think aren't important because they aren't truth in your eyes are indicative of our personal perceptions.
And
Mr. Parker, you're proving my point, which is a waste of time, but I thank you.
I mean, there's like this great Mr. Miyagi lesson I get we're supposed to all learn from this wax on, wax off bullshit, but like, let's face it.
Thank you for
let's face
proving
it.
my point.
Okay, but
But
let me
it's
tell you
both a
something
waste of
about my
time.
point. My point is that I knew before we did this little cute kindergarten exercise.
Mr. Parker,
That we
Mr.
all
Parker,
had different
this is my
ideas.
class, Mr. Parker.
All right, are you gonna kick me out?
No, but
Then maybe you should
I
respect
take your
other
point.
opinions.
I do.
You
I
didn't take
do.
my point. You interjected at every
I
point
agree with
possible.
your point. I'm trying to agree with your point, Mr. Parker. Now, you're out of my class.
didn't
Go
learn
home.
anything?
You're out of my class. Go
Fair
home.
enough.
All of you, gone. Thank you. Good job.
I think you did great, and I was listening to you.
Thank you.